Asbestos is a known carcinogen, and there's no safe level of exposure.
Mesothelioma is a miserable disease.
They must fight a truly global battle.
We want to demonstrate our enormous respect.
Keep up the good work. I look forward to the day when ADAO is no longer needed.
Fix it. Fix it. Everything in the world can be fixed.
Keep me in your heart for a while.
So we're going to ask our dear Italian colleagues, friends, activists, family members to come forward. We're going to put together, I think I can say this, you're all friends, a kick-ass panel. Hope I didn't offend anybody. But the 3 countries, we have Dr. Castleman, whose one of my favorite quotes from Barry is about safe and controlled use. Anyone who believes that is either a liar or a fool. Then you have 2 men who worked for 30 years in Italy, and also Eric from Belgium. They're going to discuss what Fernanda gave you a taste of. Corruption, Eternit, power of the people. So we're going to take 30 minutes and spend 10 minutes per country, or however you want to divide it up. It's a little scary because they have a lot to say. This could be the whole conference. But I invite you during the rest of the weekend to find these individuals, have your own conversations, join up with us on Sunday, see the movie on Wednesday. So this doesn't have to be a one-off presentation. Okay, come forward, my friend.
When Linda welcomed us yesterday, she mentioned that 9 countries were present at this conference. She never mentioned that you were going to get also introduction to foreign accents. So you had a Brazilian accent. I will introduce you to a French accent, followed by some Italians. Silence money could not buy. When Françoise Jonckheere, my mother, found out that she was diagnosed with mesothelioma, she wondered how an housewife could have been contaminated with such a high dosage of asbestos. Her husband, Pierre, had worked at Eternit and had paid his 36 years of employment at this plant at the hardest price 13 years earlier. But Françoise had never worked there. She asked a doctor to have her 5 sons also checked for the presence of this deadly mineral. Needless to say, what the results were. In those days, Eternit had a private system of compensations, $55,000 in addition to the help received from the state health system. The catch was that people accepting this kind of compensation had to grant immunity to Eternit. It was totally unacceptable for my mother, who wanted to retain her freedom, to initiate a court case. She flatly refused that offer made by the CEO of this multinational company with long arms and bottomless pockets. I will not deny this sum would have been welcome, but it was just unthinkable for us to grant any immunity to these people, and indirectly to the Emsens family, in which my family had placed so much trust and admiration. The country, the world had to know. How many other villages, like the one I grew up, bear the scars of asbestos and same family dramas? How many cases similar to my family can be counted in Torino, Libya, or Kinshasa in Congo, and elsewhere in the world where asbestos is still being manufactured, mixed, or removed? She contacted a prominent social lawyer before pushing for the creation of an asbestos victim association. Abeva was thus born in 2000, just a few weeks before she passed away. Here we were, the 5 boys, having to deal with her loss, and in the same time make some crucial decisions on what had to be initiated from scratch. Never in Belgium had such a lawsuit been initiated by a victim of asbestos in a civil court. You may ask, why? How was this situation of quasi-silence being able to exist in my country, who had been the biggest consumer of asbestos in the world per capita? Eternit was one of the major players in the asbestos cement industry worldwide. The family holding the Eternit patent since 1906, the MSense, became the fourth wealthiest family in Belgium, where some were given noble titles like Baron, but with this kind of power in hand, it was not difficult to have access to some high decision levels, influence trade unions, medical research, and competition who was trying to promote substitute. You are now well aware of the outcome of the two major court cases that made the headlines in recent months in Brussels and Torino. Victory for the victims on the two occasions. Initial filing in 1999, judgment in 2011. Almost 12 years had passed. You may think that's an awful long time, and to a certain degree, you're right. If the passing of two of my other brothers, also due to asbestos, was certainly a cause for a pause due mainly to discouragement, extensive research had to be undertaken. We had to start from scratch, translate so many documents. During these 11 years, I have seen with great satisfaction that the fraternal ties have developed between a number of lawyers and activists involved in similar cases, like wine, which improved with years. Time has helped in our favor and in raising public awareness. Another reason for the delay was the delicate statute of limitation in Belgium. In civil litigation, such as this one, the victim has 20 years after the last exposure and 5 years after the beginning of his disease to undertake a court case. The fibers found in my mom's lung during their autopsy were for 70% of blue asbestos and 30% of crassatile. Since Eternit last used blue asbestos in Belgium in the late 70s, they tried to claim that she was in fact contaminated during the 70s, thus well outside the legal time frame set by the law. But our attorney, Jan Vermont, of course, had another date to offer. And the last exposure was in fact 1993 when my mother moved away from the village and thus away from the plant, which was still heavily using white asbestos. This was the date the judge used as the last time my family was exposed to asbestos. If Boeing allows me to discover the world, asbestos and the victim give me the opportunity to travel with a very different perspective. The similarities in the modus operandi of asbestos producers, in their propaganda and misinformation can be found all over the world. The MSense family is thus at the center of a powerful cartel set in the 20s. Decisions impacting negatively millions of lives were made less than 1 mile from where I grew up. Being in Torino gave me a strange sense of reality check, perhaps even a sense of guilt. New factories have opened in countries where regulations are not too stringent. Asbestos today is becoming a matter of justice, but it remains also a health issue. A recent visit to a former factory located in the heart of Kinshasa in Congo also allows me to realize that the environment is highly saturated. Soil pollution is obvious. Although production is altered, on this stormy Saturday morning, the air is not really pleasant to breathe. I've found this indescribable odor of the plant in Capelle I had come to breathe when I was a kid. Tucked in a corner, I observed the color of the water of a decontamination pond, the same turquoise, the same big crust formed by the mix of industrial waste. My work as an amateur spy is interrupted by a hum of a tired and inefficient ventilator. To my wildest surprise, it is identical to the one located close to the office, adjoining the banks of the canal where my dad once worked. In fact, nothing has changed since my childhood. The production method still have so very little regard to the health of the workers and the environment. Faced with such challenges, faced with such a powerful lobby, it is essential that victims and their family unite. Experience gained in our region must serve those who are forced to work in environments heavily contaminated with asbestos and often without protections. The shipbreaking industry along the western shores of India is a perfect example. For the last 7 years, I've been honored to meet victims and many associations looking after their interests. The language barrier, through a real problem sometimes, has never prevented us to exchange information and documents. If the asbestos lobby was able to grow and proliferate to so many countries for so long, it is now imperative that victims come together. Social network may provide a link between us. Sharing moments like this one here today is definitely another way to connect. At ABEVA, we have seen the need to set up a virtual library hosting all documents related to legal cases involving asbestos worldwide. The two recent victories in Italy and Belgium have allowed ABEVA to gain attention amongst the political circles. A large public discovered what a single housewife had dared done against a major corporation. To my big surprise, all political parties have lent us their ears. Last February, we were invited to talk to the Senate Health Committee in Brussels. ABEVA is pressing for an improvement in the asbestos fund created in 2007. A leading Belgian newspaper gave my mother the distinctive title of the Belgian version of Erin Brockovich. I must admit, we were quite proud of it. But the 82-year-old Romana Pavesi from Casale in Torino definitely also deserved the same title. And I'm sure we have a few Erin Brockovich sitting in this room as well. Money has been able to silence so many victims. The asbestos producer definitely have truckloads of it. But this is a reason why the world needs many Erin Brockovich who will not shut up, even if none of us will expect them to go as far as Julia Roberts was prepared to go in her pursuit of truth. Since the opening of the trial in Brussels, a few people have sent us their recollection and experience with Eternit. Two have struck my mind. One was sent by an 83-year-old man who visited Eternit in 1948, remember. The young man leading the group inside the plant was Walter Emsens. When they enter the area that we can call the mixing area, Walter rushed his buddies out the building saying, "Let's move out of here. Breathing the air could be dangerous." 1948. A second witness came forward with an even more troubling recollection. This gentleman is a chemist. He worked for Fabelta, which is part of the PMC Corporation, a US leader in resin manufacturing. After succeeding in creating a substitute to asbestos in their labs, the whole team, including the US boss, was invited to show their invention at the Eternit plant in Capelle. Again, the results were more than conclusive, but Eternit never signed the deal, stating that as long as the use of asbestos was not forbidden in Belgium, they would continue to use it as long as possible. This test and the letdown happened in 1984. Many jobs and lives would have been saved. I titled my presentation, "Money, Silence Money Could Not Buy." Just 5 days ago, I was informed by the Belgian Cancer Society that Eternit had made a donation of nearly $4 million for the purpose of funding the research towards finding a cure to mesothelioma. Should we be happy? Should we be surprised? Should we be perplexed? We think the timing is not a coincidence. Eternit had received so much bad publicity and we face an uphill battle in the court. This is at least what they hope should give them a sense of acting responsibly and become active in prevention. They probably also hope to silence the media and the anti-asbestos activists like us. Let me tell you, a lot more money will be needed for research, but no money will keep me from denouncing their criminal activities. ABEVA, ADAO, and many other organizations like the one sitting today are hand in hand and must ban asbestos. One of the biggest challenges before us is to push for the research in finding a cure to mesothelioma, because beyond the shadows and the memory of the loved one gone are the people who do not yet know that their life is at risk. Thank you for your attention.
Is the sentence, the verdict reading, is a 2-minute clip. It's anyway, the judge is saying that it's sentenced for 16 years of jail, and this is the reaction of the people in the room. That is very emotional, but very silent, and emotion is not so explicit. And those are the mayors of the city affected by the contamination. And those are the lawyers, defendants' lawyers. And then the next one in the picture will be, those are the prosecutors, 3 prosecutors, led by Raffaele Guarignello, this man, that is the man that for more than 6 years investigated about the case to set up this important, unique criminal case against Eternit. And here the flag, Eternit Justice, made. We got it. So.
Carissimi amici, questo convegno è un'importante conferma della funzione della nostra multinazionale delle vittime. I tanti David possono sconfiggere i Golia.
My dear friends, this conference once again highlights the important role of the victims' multinationals. Many Davids who will work together to overcome Goliath.
La collaborazione internazionale fra le associazioni come le nostre, il contributo onesto e di grande professionalità di studiosi come il nostro perito Barry Castleman, qui presente, è di grande aiuto per un'efficace azione per rafforzare la fiducia di tutti noi per ottenere giustizia.
International cooperation with associations like ours and the contribution of honest and great expertise of scholars such as our expert witness Barry Castleman, who is here today, all greatly contribute to the effectiveness of our action and made us all stronger so we may have justice.
Il 13 febbraio 2012, presso il Palazzo di Giustizia di Torino, dal presidente Giuseppe Casalbore è stata pronunciata la sentenza del maxi processo al vertice della multinazionale Eternit, colpevole di disastro ambientale doloso permanente e violazione dolosa delle norme di sicurezza in fabbrica. 16 anni di reclusione al barone belga Louis de Cartier de Marchand e al meate svizzero Stefan Schmidaine.
On February 13, 2012, at Turin Court, Justice Casalbore read out the verdict of the trial, the Great Trial, against the executive of the multinational Eternit, finding then the company guilty of permanent willful damage to the environment and violation of health and safety regulation at the plants. Baron Louis de Cartier de Marchand and the Swiss tycoon Stefan Schmidaini were both sentenced to 16 years.
Il processo penale ha avuto inizio il 10 dicembre 2009 presso il Tribunale di Torino con 4 stabilimenti indagati: Casale Monferrato, Cavagnolo, Rubiera e Napoli. Per noi, vittime dell'amianto, è un evento atteso da oltre 30 anni. Anni di lotta intensa nei quali abbiamo portato a casa una sentenza penale di condanna dei manager, 1993, dei manager locali, e la legge nazionale di messa al bando dell'amianto nel 1992, un piano di bonifica territoriale. Il sindacato e poi l'associazione familiare delle vittime dell'amianto, AFEVA, hanno sempre perseguito con caparbietà e senza compromessi 3 scopi prioritari: giustizia, bonifica, cura e ricerca sanitaria.
The criminal trial started on December the 10th, 2009 at the Turin courts, and 4 plants were involved, Eternit plants in Italy. Those are Casale Monferrato, the largest, Cavagnolo, near Torino, Rubiera, and Naples Bagnoli. As asbestos victim, we had been waiting for over 30 years during which we fought relentlessly, and during which we managed to have a criminal conviction against the local management in 1993, national legislation banning asbestos approved, as well as a plan for the contamination of the areas. The union and the AFEVA, the Association of Victims of Casale, have stubbornly and uncompromisingly pursued 3 priorities: justice, decontamination, treatment and research.
La FEVA continua questa giusta lotta con tutti voi per ottenere giustizia per tutte le vittime dell'amianto. Questa è la nostra multinazionale delle vittime. Grazie a voi tutti.
AFEVA intends to pursue this legitimate and right struggle with all of you to get justice for all the victims. This will be, in brackets, our multinational of the victims. Thank you very much.
Il processo è stato unico per le sue monumentali dimensioni. 220.000 le pagine di questa maxi inchiesta, diretta con eccezionale esperienza dal pubblico ministero Raffaele Guadagnello. Quasi 3.000 le vittime individuate come parti lese, circa 2/3 delle quali già decedute, il 75% delle quali di Casale Monferrato, di cui 300 sono cittadini, oggi 600, deceduti per mesothelioma ed oltre 1.000 lavoratori deceduti per asbestosi, carcinoma polmonare e mesothelioma. A queste cifre impressionanti vanno poi aggiunte quelle riscontrate dal 2008 ad oggi, che daranno presto ad un secondo processo Eternit per omicidio volontario.
The trial was unique in terms of its sheer size. It's 220,000 pages of the maxi investigation led with outstanding expertise by public prosecutor Raffaele Guadagnello and his crew, 3,000 victims as plaintiff, 2/3 of whom deceased, 75% of whom from Casale Monferrato, means 300 members of the community, and the figure has now risen and there are 600. And over 1,000 workers who died because of asbestosis, lung cancer and mesothelioma. These staggering numbers only go up the 2008 with the new victims will soon form another trial, aka the Eternit bis trial, where the defendants will be trial for the willful murder.
I mesotelioma in Italia sono oramai più di 1.400 all'anno. Nella cittadina di Casale Monferrato, 36.000 abitanti, le diagnosi hanno superato attualmente i 58 casi all'anno, ma l'80% dei quali riguardano la popolazione in generale. Speriamo di superare al più presto il picco mortale.
Currently, there are more than 1,400 cases of mesothelioma a year in Italy. In Casale Monferrato alone, that citizenship is 7,000. Currently, there are more than 58 new cases being diagnosed every year, 80% of whom are members of the community. We are hoping deaths per year will soon peak.
Alle spalle di quello che è il più grande processo sulle morti bianche in Europa e non solo, c'è una lunga lotta senza quartiere contro l'amianto, una lotta che si è sviluppata su due fronti. Da un lato l'azione di tutela individuale dei lavoratori da parte del sindacato, in particolare della Camera del Lavoro di Casale e del suo servizio specifico di assistenza tecnica legale, cioè l'INCA-CGIL. Si è trattato di un contenzioso medico-legale molto esteso e complesso. Mentre la prima asbestosi fu riconosciuta a Casale già nel 1943, il mesotelioma in quanto tale, cioè non accompagnato da asbestosi, fu riconosciuto dall'INAIL solo nel 1987 dopo una sentenza positiva.
Leading up to the greatest trial for work-related deaths in Europe, and not just in Europe, there is a long history of all-out fights against asbestos, which are developed along two fronts. Defense of the individual workers by the unions, especially the Casale CGIL, Camera del Lavoro of Casale Monferrato, and the technical and legal INCA-CGIL assistance. It is a very complex and far-reaching medical and legal dispute. The first asbestosis case in Casale dates back to 1943. But INAIL, the National Agency for Industrial Disease and Insurance, failed to recognize mesothelioma as an asbestos-related disease when, on its own, that is not accompanied by asbestosis, till a court sentences in 1987.
Il nostro impegno fa parte del vostro impegno. Insieme siamo più forti. Grazie.
Our engagement includes your engagement as well. Let us join together to be stronger. Thank you.
This is an amazing scene. I mean, you have these Eternit Justitia banners flying everywhere in this town. This town's been devastated by asbestos disease. These are people who live by farming in a rural area, and the only factory was this asbestos factory, and everybody knows someone who worked there or got sick or died from working there. These banners are everywhere. I was in a public square once, and they were on 4 sides of the square, including a private bank. In terms of the demonstrations, the organization of the community is just remarkable. What you see in this place. And I just want to commend the Italian system of justice for being unique in the world in investigating death on the job as a criminal matter. In the past, they've put dye plant managers in jail for over 100 cases of bladder cancer from well-known dye intermediates that caused bladder cancer. When they had the Seveso plant explosion in 1976, they put the plant manager in jail. I mean, Italians do have some history in this, but this case was unprecedented in that they charged the foreign owners and executives, not just the local plant manager and the company doc. They actually went to the big guys. And this case, in its decision and its worldwide reporting, helped to frame the picture of the asbestos industry as a criminal industry, as an industry that basically builds its fortune on human suffering. And this has gotten a lot of play in India and Brazil and in Canada, this criminal decision. So it's very important. And I would just conclude by giving you my five-part formula for prevention of occupational and environmental illness that I give to students in public health sometimes: information, regulation, compensation, humiliation, and incarceration.
I'm going to vote for Barry for president or something like that, because we can like save money and taxes and laws. Okay, so this was an amazing panel. I joined the folks of Casale when Fernanda introduced me to them last year. It's almost a year to this date. And you'll have to translate really fast, Nicola, because you know how I talk. But the people from Casale welcomed me as an American girl and widow. But they brought me into their home. But really what they did is they opened my very blind American eyes to what goes on in other countries. I hadn't had the opportunity to go to Italy. I only knew of Libya and some other places, and I learned so much by going to Italy and becoming part of their family and their struggle. Their struggle happened with the help of a few people that need to be recognized. One is Vicky. In your program, we put a tribute page in. Vicky was a translator in the court system, which is a long, lovely story Barry can share with you later. But the net is because of Vicky's amazing ability, passion, and dedication to the Italian case, she translated journalist articles, memos, meetings, declarations. We're in love with Vicky, and we would love for you to recognize her in this program. But yes. I will tell you, with tears, we all cried when Marco lost his battle. Marco was a brilliant editor for a paper in Casale. He didn't work as a tradesman. He lived near the factory. His wife, Silvana, from La Stampa, wrote amazing articles, and Vicky translated them so then we could put them out to the United States. This trial was a landmark for all of us, not only for the verdict, but it shows that together change is possible, and the only barriers we have are the ones we put upon ourselves, that we can indeed work together. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You're amazing.
Keep up the good work. I look forward to the day when ADAO is no longer needed.
Fix it. Fix it. Everything in the world can be fixed.
In your heart for a while.